Teacher Survivalist Module 9. Being unhappy has a 1-year expiration date. Making changes for longevity in teaching. Module 9 is probably my favorite. Here we get very real about getting through a challenging year of teaching. I have to give you a big warning here. I do use the B word quite a bit during this module because it is used as a reference for a song in a Broadway musical and then referenced throughout the module. Please listen with sensitivity, and if there are young ears around, be sure to put your headphones in. Your goal in Module 9 is to create an action plan for a challenging time or a challenging year in education through the 3-step module guide of damming it, gritting it, and birthing it. For this module, you will receive a 2-part companion resource. Part 1 is your happiness flowchart. This gives you an idea of how to create an action plan and the steps to take in order to be successful. It also gives you an idea of what's going to happen if you don't create a plan. Part 2 of the companion resource is your action plan, where you will be guided through the 3-step process in order to create your 1-year guide towards happiness. You don't need to try so hard. Realize you're right where you need to be. You had it from the very start. We're going to talk about happiness, or lack thereof for many people. I taught a class recently, and my students all came in and they were not having it. They weren't upset. They weren't frustrated with me. They were just sad. They were very down, and the energy in the room was really low. And I asked them, what's going on? And I got a lot of the generic excuses. It's whatever day of the week it is. It's a Monday. It's a Tuesday. It doesn't matter what day it is. Teachers and students alike will use that as an excuse. Or I didn't get enough sleep, things like that. But I did have one student who said the power company came to their house, and that is certainly legitimate and sad. I mean, we never know what these kids are coming to us with. They also don't know what we're coming to them with. So, I mean, for example, there was a time that I taught and I was going through a breakup, and I jumped right into my teaching, and they didn't know about it, but I brought that with me every day, and they do the same thing. So now's a great time to talk about where we go from that point. You know, when we're working and things change. Language warning. We've done it. We all know the people that do it, but there's a song in a Broadway musical called Falsettos, and it goes like this. Bitch, 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 funny, 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 bitch, 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 bitch. We all start bitching. I'm so sorry for the language, but that song really sticks out in my mind. So, you know, when these frustrations happen, then it becomes like anybody that's living a sedentary lifestyle in that building, man, suddenly they got the hustle. It's like running around that school, and whoever can share this frustration fastest is the winner. And that's fine. So I actually am going to take a second and I'm going to backtrack and I'm going to say, take a minute and bitch. Bitch to yourself. Bitch to your friends. Bitch to the wall. But the bitching has to end at some point. So what I am suggesting is when you have these like hard to digest moments in your workplace where you're like, no, they can't do this to me. This is another thing, whatever it is. Yeah, you can vent that. For me, I like to vent that. But rather than running around the building to every single person I see to kind of get them hyped up and angry with me, which is not helpful, you pick a person. You can make them your bitch person. Go up to somebody and say, will you be my bitch? And you'd be surprised they probably will be. Sorry, friend. I hope that's not offensive. But my point is, like, whenever something happens, I send a text to that one person, we hash it out, and then I have the ability to move on. So my point is, yeah, have the moment, get frustrated, be angry, but don't tell everyone and their mom. At that point, you're creating issues. You are that person in the building. So complain or whatever it is to the 1 or 2 people that you trust, not the people who are going to light that on fire, not the people who are going to make it worse. This is very hard to find in especially education land. much less the real world, especially in friend land too. But it's great to have a person you can bitch to, but that person should have great ears. They shouldn't just bitch back at you. Two bitches don't make it right. So make sure that whoever you're going to vent to, they listen, they understand what listening is, and then you guys can move on. So that's the first thing. Take your time, complain, whatever. So on that note today, we're going to talk about happiness. And the idea here is it's okay not to be happy. It is okay to go in and dread the day. It is okay to not look forward to seeing certain colleagues. It is okay. It is okay. It is okay. Wait for it. For a year. It is okay for a year. That's the timestamp that I will put on it. You can change that as you like. We're always trying to fix things, and the idea of not being happy is not cool for a lot of people. But I'm going to tell you, it's okay. And so today my goal is to help you take your shoulders out of your ears, breathe, and realize I'm not happy, but it's okay for a year. All right. And so what I want to talk about is whether you're in education or whether you're in any other type of job, and if you are in it for the long haul, things can't be great every day. Yes, there is putting positive energy out there. Yes, there's putting a smile on your face. But whether it's outside factors or, factors within the building or environment you're working in, it's not always going to be great. And it is okay. I will never stop saying that. If I could hug you right now, I would hug you and tell you it is okay. Actually, I'd encourage you to find somebody to do that and use your words and literally walk up to a coworker you trust without violating any of our trainings on that stuff and just say, like, today's shit. Can you hug me? And at least that'll give you kind of a reset. But we're going to talk today about how it's okay to be happy for a year, and then what? What does the future look like? And what I'm trying to get around to you is it is in your control. It may not feel like it because you have certain, coworkers that are coming to you with all their daily garbage, or you have administration or bosses who are dumping on you, or whatever it may be. It may feel like you don't have any control, but I'm here to remind you that you are in control. You do have what it takes to gain back control of your own personal environment and change the outcome of your future school years. And the second thing is, just like with anything in life, anything, here's some perspective for you. There are stages. There are stages to grief. There are stages to groups. I love that. If you ever get the chance, take a minute and research group dynamics and just the evolution of teams or groups throughout a certain period of time. It's really fascinating. It'll help you understand your students better also. I'll come back to that. But there are stages, and there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. And for you listening to this today, I hope that you were at a low or... No, I don't. I'm sorry. I hope that you're at a high. And if you're at a low, I'm going to give you some hope. Let's face it. We work in an environment that is unpredictable, and there are changes that happen constantly that are usually out of your control. Even very simple changes to routines or anything, protocols, completely shifts your day and can shift your attitude. Now it's time to look at the 3-step process to this. It's the 3 it's that I'm going to call it. So when things go wrong, we're going to have the damn it, the grit it, and the birth it. That's what we're looking at today. Damn it, grit it, birth it. Anyway, so when this happens, you can run around, you can share your frustrations, and then it comes down to, where do you go from here? So that whole damn it moment is what we just did. You're recognizing that suddenly there's going to be a fire drill during your lab that day, or you're recognizing that you are in trouble with a parent and that's going to affect you in some way. Whatever it is, you need that moment of recognition, and you can bitch about it. You have my approval. You have my permission. You have my bitch mission, if you will. But once you get kind of through the damn it moment, it's the grit it moment. And what we're talking about here is where you get to decide, am I going to take action or am I going to be inactive? So am I going to kind of rise to the occasion and just handle whatever situation's going on? For instance, when I would teach, I had lots of labs and my students would cook, and there would be lots of interruptions to that. And I put a lot of time and energy. So when I would get interrupted, especially with like some kind of drill, a lockdown or whatever it might be, I'd get real pissed and I would want to bitch. But the reality is I had to grit it, kind of like get it and grit it at the same time. And I would move on. So during this point, you need to kind of decide what you're going to do. Are you going to take action or not? Now, let's see the bigger picture here. We're talking about a year of unhappiness. Okay. So far we've been talking about like one instance in the building and taking a minute to complain about it and move on. But the reality is we're looking at an entire year of just roughness. So when it comes down to the gritting it, this is where you're going to take action. You're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm either going to quit, I'm going to blow up on somebody, which is never helpful, or I'm just going to stick with it and be that teacher in the building who's like, 5 more years till retirement, 5 more years, but they're not really doing a great job. So the gritting it becomes this really introverted process of looking at yourself and looking at your teaching and really seeing, what do I enjoy the most? At the end of the day, if I have a good day, why? What was it? What did I enjoy the most? And for me, the best and worst part of the job, well, not always, but the best and worst part of the job were the students. And they certainly were the best. And so during my teaching, I would have these lows. It's 15 years. And they say kind of the first 5 years makes you or breaks you. And I can attest to that. On my 5th year of teaching, I was named Teacher of the Year, which was incredible, but it was probably the worst teaching year so far. I was at my wit's end. I was so far at my wit's end that I didn't even have time to write the paper for the Teacher of the Year because I was stressed so much about my job and some of the students. And that's when I knew I had to grit it. I had to kind of sit with myself and think, like, what am I going to do? I'm a determined person. I do not give up. So what can I take control of? Because you do have control. And what can I change about my teaching? So in year 5, I went back to my roots and I signed up for a classroom management class, which sucks. I had to get over myself. I had to realize, maybe I don't know as much as I thought I did. And I had to be willing to kind of open my mind up to other ideas and realize, like, I've got to change something. And for me, I needed to get better control of my classroom that year. So I signed up for a classroom management class, and it was probably about what you would expect from it. We had a textbook. It was a lot of like, yeah, I already do that. Okay, sure, whatever. But my persistence stayed with me, my gritting it. And I thought, there's got to be nuggets here. So I'm just going to start digging. And whenever I hear something, it doesn't matter how tiny it is. Does not matter. I'm going to take that and adapt it for my teaching. And so when I left that 1-week PD over the summer, I left with a sense of empowerment. Like, I'm the boss and I'm in control. These students are looking to me, and I can create an environment in which everyone can be heard and be respected. I knew I could do that. And I knew that I could get their attention in a way that I needed to in order for them to be able to learn. That was the way I gritted it that summer. The last step of the process is birthing it. This is where you create your plan. What are you going to do? What's going to happen once you have gritted it? What's going to happen once you have done the training or figured out what it is or whatever it might be? And so for me, it was a completely
I had to completely restructure my start of the year. I knew that I had a restart coming up in August, and those kids didn't know me. And if they did, they were about to know somebody new. So the biggest thing for me at that point was create the plan, mean what I say, and be so consistent that it's obnoxious. So consistent. And that's when I really started taking out a lot of time for the start of the year systems or processes, as I call it. So my students knew exactly what's going on. Birth it. So damn it, grit it, and birth it. Let me give you a couple of other examples, because through the ebb and flow of teaching, my classes have changed, my life has changed, I have had kids, whatever. So during another point in education, and it was just when I was getting kind of bored. It's like, I don't know about you, but if you're a math teacher or a science teacher or even a CTE teacher or whatever it is, you can only do the same thing for so long until you're bored and then your students are bored. So I noticed that my expectations were kind of getting lower over the years, and I was not a big fan of that. I'm not trying to buy into the world of creating future adults who have low expectations. And so that time, when I had that damn it moment, I was like, damn it, I can't keep letting these kids get by with everything. I have to set higher expectations for them and for myself as a teacher, regardless of what the district protocol or the school protocol was. So that was my damn it moment. My grit it moment was, how am I going to increase my expectations with my students? I'm going to incorporate something that outlines the expectations for me, and all I have to do is enforce them. So that was the year that I started a student organization. My students would compete in local, state, and national competitions, and they had rigorous standards and rubrics to follow. And by using that student organization, I was able to incorporate it into my classroom and say, these expectations are not mine. You have to do this in the business world. You have to do this when you compete in these competitions. So this is what we're going to follow, which took a lot of that off my back. No longer was it like, why, Mr. Coyle Smith? Why are you making us do this? It wasn't me that was making them. But I could follow the guidelines. They were just already laid out for me. And then the birthing it was, we created the organization. It was phenomenal. We competed in state and national competitions, and I flew students to Orlando and San Diego and Nashville, and we traveled all over the state as well. So that was a pretty amazing experience that reinvigorated my teaching. So even though it wasn't in my classroom every single day, because it was also an extracurricular, it motivated every single day of teaching for me that entire year. Well, those years, I guess, because it went on for years. And when it stopped being fun, I stopped doing it. So that was a really great way that I kind of applied the damn it, grit it, and birth it technique. Another way was, why I'm sitting here even now. I had been teaching for quite a while. This is kind of like every 5 years. So you heard the first 5, you heard the second 5, and this is the third 5. But I had done more organizations and all kinds of other things. And I was still just kind of thinking, like, I'm feeling a little bit like in place. I need to kind of shake things up for myself. And so that time I decided to leave. I left the building that I had known for 13 years, something like that, and tried something new. So the damn it moment was like, I can't stay here anymore. Yes, I love these people, but for me personally, I don't feel like I can grow anymore here. I need a change. So I left the building. I became a virtual teacher. The grit it was the leaving, the unknown, the applying for these other jobs. I didn't really know where I was going. And then the birthing it was getting a job as a virtual teacher to teach skill-based classes. I had no idea how I was going to do that, but I figured it out and I managed and it worked out fine. So that's kind of like the quick of my background. And what I want you to do is take a minute and think about, what are your damn it moments? How have you created your action plan to get through them? And what did it turn into? What did you birth out of that? How did it reinvigorate your teaching? The big hang up here is for our passive people, the ones who don't take action. They don't make it past or even into the grit it stage. They're the ones at this school that you need to be aware of. They're the ones that if they're your bitch participant, you're just kind of creating a toxic environment for yourself. Your students, you expect growth and change from them every single day. They should see that in you. When I see students out in public to this day, they say, "Oh, are you still doing this or that?" And my answer might be, yes, I do still teach that class, but let me tell you all the ways that it's different from when I taught it to you. Just some quick things. If that's too much, like if you're like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, sure, whatever. I can't do all that stuff." You can find little teeny tiny nuggets that are just fun, and you can reinvigorate a week. You can reinvigorate a month, whatever it might be. So some other little quickie examples that we did throughout our years together. I'm talking about me and my students. We participated in a photo contest for our local city, a water photo contest. That was fun. My students got to win. Any opportunity you provide them the chance to succeed or win something, I think is great. The other thing that we did was we competed in a national popcorn competition, came in second place, and we won $1,000. That was crazy. I've coached sports and brought students along with me for that. We have done a drive-in movie event. That was a one-night thing. So I'm not just trying to take a minute to brag on all the stuff that I've done, but I'm just trying to say, like, for me, complacency wasn't an option. And for you, I need you to look in and see right now if the reason you don't love it is because you are complacent. And how are you going to have your damn it moment? How are you going to grit it and come up with something? And how are you going to birth that into something completely new for yourself that will reinvigorate not only you, your students, but pretty much your entire life?
You don't need to try so hard.